Welcome back, everyone, to another video. I know it's been a while. You know, it's the beginning of the school year. Haven't had much time to do these things, but I've been seeing a lot of movies recently. And so I'm going to put out a bunch of reviews, some rankings, and I'm going to kick it off with the ranking today of all 5 Daniel Craig James Bond movies. You know, he was Bond for 15 years over the span of some great movies, some pretty bad movies. So I'll cover all that in the video, and hope you guys enjoy. Leave your thoughts down in the comments. If you have other thoughts, then leave your rankings. And I am happy to see anyone's thoughts on these films that are somewhat divisive, just in their nature. So yeah, leave anything you have down in the comments. But I will be kicking this ranking off with the bottom, and then ending it with the top, as per usual. So, at number 5, we are starting things off with Quantum of Solace. Now, this movie had so much it could have done right. Like, it pains me to even talk about it sometimes because, like, coming off the heels of Casino Royale, which was just, like, such a great reset for the franchise, it had so many opportunities, so many plot threads it could have followed up on. And basically how it works is that, like, you're in the middle of the tension, following up from the end of the last movie, and all of a sudden, Bond kind of just stumbles into the plot of an entirely new story, and leaves the events of the first 20 minutes behind him and doesn't even acknowledge it at all, and kind of moves through the motions of this story that doesn't really involve him at all, or isn't supposed to involve him at least. And the villain isn't compelling, the love interest is weird in that it's more of a flirtation than an actual, like, relationship, and the whole thing is one act short of being a movie. It's 1 hour and like 40 minutes, which is at least 40 minutes shorter than every other movie in the series. So it feels just like it's missing so many things. And I know in production there were a lot of problems with the script, and I think Craig had to write some of the script himself because so many people just dropped off of the movie. So I do respect that it was able to be released in the end, but because of all the troubles in production and all the problems in the editing room, it just never achieved the greatness that some of the other movies have. Continuing onward, we have number 4, which is SPECTRE, 2015 SPECTRE, the 4th movie in Daniel Craig's James Bond series. So this one, the tone is good, the acting is good, but when it really comes down to it, the 2 main problems I have with this movie are the story and, honestly, the villain. You'd think Christoph Waltz, who has won 2 Academy Awards in the past 10, 15 years, would have been at the top of his game, right? He would have been, kind of trying to figure out this character, trying to bring the best performance possible and most nuance possible to this role. But instead, it's just kind of like cardboard acting. You don't get much from his villain. And so, while it's supposed to be everything the whole time has been connected and all these villains, when it comes down to it, that doesn't really make any sense. The previous 3 movies, while building upon each other character-wise, hadn't been related too much with the villains in the plot and the conflict. And so when you have somebody who's a new character, who's been in the movie for maybe 20 minutes, come in and say that everybody that James Bond has fought for the past 10 years have all somehow been part of the same organization, had the same goal, been involved with the same person, it just makes it all feel empty. And so it diminishes the emotional resonance of Casino Royale and Skyfall, which are both really, really good movies. So when you take that away, it just kind of brings the series down a whole level, because when you cram everything that we've accomplished so far into kind of one set of conflict, it takes away a lot of the important character moments that have happened over the previous 3 movies. Now, I'm sure, as most of you would assume, there was a big jump in quality from number 4 to number 3. I would give number 4 probably 2.5 stars, and then number 3 maybe 4 stars. So there's a big gap there. I think there's, out of these 5, there are probably 2 movies I would call bad and 3 I would call good. So now we're in the good territory. So coming in at number 3 is No Time to Die, the most recent Bond film to be released. I think that the long wait from Spectre to this movie kind of helped with the story, because A, there is a time jump, a 5-year time jump, like 20 minutes into the movie, and B, because to wrap all these story points up and all these plot threads into a satisfying conclusion, you need to have time to let the previous ones simmer. So I think getting to see all these characters again, reintroducing kind of the world and making it more vibrant in this last one. The villain is like more outlandish than ever. Like the ridiculous kind of notion to his character doesn't really make sense to me at all. He has some vague motivations in there, but I thought Rami Malek did well in the role. I mean, as well as he could. It's a Bond villain. Not too much you can do with that, but he was good. Better than Christoph Waltz, surprisingly. And I thought Craig was great in his last performance. I think Spectre kind of sold me on him, Madeline Swan, as a romantic couple, but I think this movie really sold me on it. She kind of had more backstory, understood her more, understood why she might resent Bond a little bit, and the fact that she had ties to the villain as well was really interesting, because in the previous movies you kind of had that, but in this one it was like she had her own battle that she was fighting for as well, alongside, James Bond, who's the main character and also has to be the center of the conflict. I applaud their bold choice to kill off the main character. Obviously we knew it was his last movie, but I don't know if I thought he was going to die. I mean, I thought it was a possibility, but now they've kind of set themselves up for I don't know what, because the reboot can't happen for like a few years, because we have to sit with this for a while, understand that yes, they will kill the main character, they won't hesitate for that. So I am really curious to see what the next iteration is, because this was kind of a very climactic ending, and I think they really pulled it off. So if they can find a different tone, find a different style to go with, that's great, but I think letting it sit for a little while would be a good move by MGM, because this really was the perfect arc for James Bond. Great writing in this movie, great action, visual effects were on point, so letting this one kind of sit in its glory for a few years, I think would be the right choice. Alright, now we are in the top 2. I would confidently say that number 2 has to be the original Casino Royale. This is just a classic Bond story. It has everything that you want in these movies. It has a good villain, a good love interest, a good story, good writing, good character development. Daniel Craig kind of solidified his role as James Bond with this movie. If this hadn't done well, he wouldn't have had as long of a tenure as he did with this character. So I appreciate this movie for everything it did. Story-wise, the tone it set up, kind of grounding it a little more, making it a little more realistic. That kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit later on, but it still set up a nice kind of arc for him to have, and a nice progression for the story and for the believability of it all. So I think it's a great spy movie, great conflict. The one thing I would say is that there are the beginning is great, then there's a little bit of like a dead half an hour between the time that he's on the first mission with the great fight scene at the shipping yard and when Eva Green's character Vesper's introduced. Once Vesper's on screen, the second half of the movie is incredible. But before that, there's a little bit of a lag in the story. It could have been a little shorter, I think. They kind of dragged it out. But no further complaints besides that. It's great. The acting is kind of on point, very subtle from Craig. He was figuring it out still, so props to him for kind of like knowing what the character was in his first movie. Vesper, I think, is the best love interest in the whole series. No shade to Madeline Swan, but I think that Vesper accomplished more with his character. And, even in this most recent movie, he was still visiting Vesper's grave, so it just showed how much of an impact she had on him throughout the entire series. And that right there brings us to number 1, 2012's Skyfall. Now, this movie is the only one of these that I would say is purely just a great movie. The other ones, Casino Royale and No Time to Die, are both great Bond movies, But this one is just on another level. It just has that feel to it that you would get with like an Oscar-winning drama. It just has that feeling of scope and stakes that the others really didn't. You really understand kind of Bond and where he came from, and you get some of his backstory as well, which is really interesting. When we go to the orphanage and when you see his interactions with M and see why she recruited him, I think that's really pivotal to his character. I think Skyfall is the movie that kind of shaped him the most. That and Casino Royale are the two that I think shaped him the most. But this one really dove into his character more than the others. There was a lot of action, of course, a lot of fights and a lot of quippy one-liners and whatever, but there was really that sense of him being a person with human traits and a past and motivations and trauma and kind of searching for a way out of things. Similarly, the villain, Javier Bardem, was really, really great. They could not have chosen a better actor. And I know it was the beginning of them kind of choosing Oscar-winning actors for playing the role of the Bond villains, and this is the only one of the three that I think fully worked. Even though he's not introduced until halfway through the movie, changes the way I saw the entire conflict. It's like his performance was really, really great. And one of the final shots of M dying in Bond's arms, that was surprising to me, but emotionally resonant, and I think that it was bold of them to show that there are stakes and there are things that can happen. And the fact that this one also leaned more into the classic Bond tropes and the characters and the dynamic, and introduced Moneypenny and Q and all the like sort of technology aspects that we hadn't gotten in the first two. Although it made it less grounded, I think it was still fit in the world, and you had to go somewhere. And can't forget the opening credit sequence, the unforgettable song by Adele. I mean, that deserved the Oscar that it won. So that is my full ranking. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.